dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you. Beneath his wings of love abide, God will take care of you. Through days of toil when your heart doth fail, God will take care of you. When dangers fierce your path assail, God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day or all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you. All you need, he will provide. God will take care of you. Nothing you ask will be denied. God will take care of you. No matter what may be the test, God will take care of you. Lean, weary one upon his breast, God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day or all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you.
See if I turn this on correctly. Well, it's good to be here to see all these lovely people. And then you'll notice in the bulletin that Pastor Norman is supposed to be speaking, so if there's anyone here that's confused, I'm really not him, so. But it's good to be here. And so this morning I was trying to decide what to talk to you about and prayed about it and looked out at the rain and the wind and thought, I'm back home. I'm in Oklahoma. You know, all the time when I lived out of state, I didn't see sideways rain. But now we have it here from time to time, so it's kind of exciting. I don't know about y'all, but I have always loved storms. There's just something about the kinetic energy, the everything about it that just happens. Even the animals always know when a storm is coming and they react to it. There's a strong earthy smell. When my early years was spent in Oklahoma and Kansas, so they call it Tornado Alley, but tornadoes can find their way almost any place, can't they? And so that's when I went to college, I thought, well, growing up in the oil patch, I really enjoyed geology and going out and hanging out with the geologists and their core samples and so forth. I just thought it was fascinating. But then I also loved the sky and the storms and so forth. So I managed to finagle my way into the School of Engineering, but I switched from geology to meteorology. And so my fascination is with everything above and below the earth. But what's best is what's on the earth, right? With God's children and the things that He developed and designed for us. Early in the year, I believe it was 1949, it could have been 50, but it was one hot, humid springtime afternoon. And we all know what those are like, when you're so sticky that you feel like you're sticking to yourself. Well, on a farm outside of Wellston, Oklahoma, there was a lady that was working in her garden, and she had 2 young children with her. And all of a sudden, the air changed and the energy changed, and she looked up, and to the southwest, she saw a wall cloud coming. And she had always lived in Oklahoma, so she knew what it was. So she got the children and went to the house and told them to go inside and to stay inside. They had a root cellar that was good for storing canned goods and going when there was a tornado. But we had had lots and lots of rain that year, and it was full of water, so it was not safe to go into. We had no television, no Doppler radar, no early warning devices, just us, and in this case, mother's instincts and knowing what the sky, she loved watching the sky. She knew all the constellations, and of an evening she'd sit out and play her guitar and tell us about the different constellations. And it was a good way to live, to grow up. But at this particular time, it wasn't so very good. And she told the children to stay away from the windows, to go into an inside room. But they didn't. They did go in the house, but that's as far as it went. They had their faces pressed against the window, watching to see what was happening. They were frightened because it was getting closer and closer, and they could tell by Mother's body language that she was concerned. So she knelt down on her knees, facing the wall cloud, and began to pray. Now, Mother's prayers were legendary. She was a college graduate, but her prayers were very simple. In fact, someone said they'd never heard prayers that were so simple but seemed to work. And I think God knows, and He appreciates us when we talk to Him just like we talk to each other or to a friend, because He is our friend, right? So she was on her knees, and she was praying, and it got closer and closer, and then there were several little tails coming out of the cloud, but they all soon came together for one big elephant trunk. It was huge, and it was not very far. It was just across the street. We lived on 4 corners, and so the lightning was intense, the thunder was roaring, and the rain had been heavy, and then it suddenly stopped, and everything got very, very still. And we could hear her praying and thanking the Lord for saving her home and her children and herself. And it was just very, very sincere, thanking Him for what He was about to do. She prayed for anyone that might be in the path after it passed by. So a mighty roar sounded, and she was still praying. And suddenly, when it got probably from here halfway in the sanctuary, that distance, it was very close, she was still on her knees, she was still praying, and it dissipated. It went away. So it was such a wonderful thing, but I've thought about it so many times. She wasn't praying to be saved. She was thanking him for saving us. I think sometimes it's easy to ask God for what we want and what we think we need, but maybe if we really practice the ABCs of prayer, ask, believe, and claim. If we claim the promises, if we truly believe that God will give us what we need, if it's good for us, He will. But we also have to remember to pray that not my will, but thine be done. In working with people that their family members were sick with life-threatening illnesses, it's so difficult. It hurts so much to hear them pray that God will heal their spouse or their child or whatever. We want God to heal them, but we also want God. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows everything, what it's supposed to be like and how it will be. So that trust that we need, that believe that God will do for us what we should have done for us, that's something that we need to hold close and to be very, very careful. I have probably one of my better friends in West Virginia. Last May, her father died, and she was very, very close to him. This week, her husband died. He had lung cancer. He was highly decorated in Vietnam and was exposed to a lot of things, including smoke, cigarette smoke. But it's really hard for her because she just couldn't believe that God would not heal him. So through the last few months, we've talked on the phone many, many, many times. And that faith, I think the devil comes into play and he whispers in her ear and says, see, he didn't heal your husband. He took your father. He took this, he did that. We have to be so close to God every day in every way. Start the day with God, because that faith is what we have, and that faith is what will carry us through no matter what the future brings. In 2 Kings 2, I'm reading from NIV. If you want to follow along, that's fine, or not, but it says, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, you stay here, because the Lord has sent me to Bethel. But Elisha said, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went on to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came to Elisha and said, do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today? Yes, I know. So be quiet. Drop it. Then Elijah said to him, you stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me on to Jericho. And he replied again, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went on to Jericho. Then Elijah said to him, you stay here. The Lord has sent me to Jordan. And he replied one more time, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. That's commitment, isn't it? Isn't that commitment? So the two of them walked on. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it, and the water divided to the right and to the left, and they crossed over on dry ground. We've heard about dry ground in rivers before, haven't we? When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you, because I'm being taken from you." He said, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." Now, I've often wondered, I know they were close, and I know that Elijah was a mentor, but that takes a lot to ask for double portion, doesn't it? Have you ever been on your knees asking the Lord for a double portion of faith, a double portion of anything? Matthew 7:7-8 tells us why he could do that. He said, "I know you," and I know that you all know this by heart, but let's repeat it together. Matthew 7:7-8 tells us someplace, scripture that you all know, I'm sure. And it says, "Ask and it shall be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open. For everyone who asks receives, and those who seek find, and to him who knocks it will be open." We have God's promise. This is in red letters. It's God's word that is a promise. But we have to believe also, don't we? We have to do our part. Well, Elijah said, "You've asked for a very difficult thing. Yet if you see me when I'm taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it won't. It will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot afar and horses afar appeared and separated the two of them. Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Now, as a kid growing up on dirt roads, and when we would have whirlwinds, I would always think about this story because I thought it was so cool that a whirlwind took him to heaven. Elijah saw this, and he cried out, my father, the chariots of the horses of Israel." And Elijah saw him no more, and he took hold of his garment, and he ripped it in half. When you rely on someone and someone's in your life day in and day out, and you're learning from them, they're mentoring you, and then you see them just go away, even if it's not in a whirlwind, it's a shock, isn't it? It shakes your faith. But let's go back to the woman on her knees. She rose to her feet, and she lifted her arms to heaven, and she continued to pray and thank the Lord for saving her family. Visualize with me, if you would, because we've all... Is there anyone that hasn't seen a tornado? You haven't? Well, stick around. They're exciting. They are. But she rose to her feet, and she continued to pray long after it had went away, and to thank the Lord for saving her home and her family. Can you imagine? Because I can't. First of all, the woman was my mother. I know the story's true because I witnessed it. And it was my brother and myself. You've met my brother Dwayne. But I'm not sure I'm brave enough to kneel and face a tornado that is that close to me. If I have enough faith, I ask myself this, do I have enough faith that I can trust in the Lord? I pray I do, but I don't really want to be put in that position to find out for sure. But it's something that we don't know what the future is. You turn on the news, you read the paper, or you just listen to your neighbors or your gut level instinct, and we know that times are changing. We know the world is changing. We don't know, no one knows but God, the time when his Father will say, bring my children home. We don't know. Even Jesus doesn't know. So we have to be ready. We have to be prepared. But we also have to have that faith to know that when it really gets bad, and it will, if we read our Bibles, when it really gets bad, are we going to have the faith to stand and face it? I don't know if I've used it here, but a few years ago in North Pacific, there was a student that at an Adventist school that was expelled for, I don't remember the reason, but he came back with a gun and he shot some people. And there was a little girl, and I believe she was 9 years old, and he held the gun to her temple, and he said, if you'll say, there is no God, I don't believe in God, I won't shoot you. She would not say it, and he shot her. There's so many stories of martyrs every place, but when I think of someone so young, someone that had so much faith in God and so much courage that she could face that, and she could still say, I believe in God. Now, I've had a gun held to my head a couple of times. I should read How to Win Friends and Influence People, I guess. But at any rate, that's a pretty difficult situation to be in. And for a 9-year-old, I am just amazed when I think of the story. But we have to have faith. Faith is a mustard seed. Why didn't God allow that tornado to dissipate long before it got right to the edge of the yard? Why does he let things happen when we're praying and when we're working, trying to correct things? Was her prayer answered because she told God what she wanted? Or was it answered just because she thanked God and she had faith and she let him know? You know, things like that we'll never really know until we reach heaven. And at that time, I'm not sure that we're really going to care. It'd be so beautiful being there and enjoying all the good food and fruit and traveling around and seeing. Can you imagine what heaven's going to be like? Ellen White wrote a little compilation, a little blue book called Heaven. That was Mom's favorite book before she died. I think I read it to her so many times the last 2 or 3 weeks she was in the hospital that I had it memorized. But heaven is wonderful. There's nothing on this earth, nothing that would make it, missing heaven, worth it. Not anything. Oh, like I said, that was a true story. It really happened. And my son, who, bless his heart, is a really great guy, but does not have much faith in church. He still hung up on a pastor years ago that talked about 144,000 was all that would go to heaven. And in his mind, that just doesn't compute. But at any rate, after Mother's funeral, because he never talks about prayer or religion, he changes the subject if I bring it up. But his wife told me that when they got in the car to go to the cemetery, that tears rolled down his cheeks. And he said, "Who's going to pray for me now that Grandma's gone?" Well, that hurt me because he didn't realize that I was praying for him also. But Diana said, "I know your mom prays for you. I know there's a lot of other people that do too." So that satisfied him. But every once in a while he'll say, "Pray for me, Mom," because he travels a lot. And between my son and my brother, I never know for sure what part of the earth they're on. And when 9/11 happened, they were both in the air, and I wasn't sure then. Elijah picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him, and he stood on the banks of the Jordan. He took the cloak and he struck the water, and the water opened, divided with dry land. And the prophets that were watching said, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And he answered when he struck the water and he crossed it. And he said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting." And they went to meet him and bowed on the ground before him. They said, "Look, we are your servants. We have 50 able men. Let them go and find your master." Because probably God just moved him someplace and he's lost right now. Let us go find him. Well, Elijah knew that wasn't going to happen. And he told them no. And they persisted, so finally he was embarrassed to keep telling them no. So he said, "Okay, go." So they searched 50 men for 3 days, and they came back to him and they said, "We can't find your master." Well, Elijah was one of those people that I guess would say, "I told you so," because he said, "Didn't I tell you not to go?" There's so many lessons that we can learn from Elijah and Elisha that apply to us today. It should give us the assurance that our feet are standing on a very sure foundation. The history of these two important prophets needs to be studied in clear lines. Our people need to understand the importance of work today so that we might have the assurance that we're standing on firm foundation. We need to share the beautiful message to our friends and neighbors. And there's many ways that we can share. We don't have to just beat them over the head. But we have so many things, so much literature that we can pass out. We can just smile and say, here's a little something that you might enjoy. One time, not too long ago, I went through a drive-through, and my favorite small things is Glow Track, and it has a picture of a gift on it with a red ribbon. Especially around Christmas time, it's especially nice. But I like to get that out, so I handed it to this girl, and I said, "Here's a little gift for you." And she looked at it, and she reached down, and she took a whole handful. And she said, "This is what other people have left." I said, "Well, you've got a gift now." So I don't know that she read it or not, but I didn't realize that other churches and other people gave out so many letters, so much literature also. So if they are, we certainly need to get the good news that we have out, don't we? Please indulge me with another family story. My father had 7 brothers. 4 were older and 3 were younger. The 3 younger brothers stuck together through thick and thin. Their mother died when they were young, and their father was not an emotional person. He was just a good old country farmer. The boys went to World War II. And through all the years, they stayed very close to each other. They would come out to the farm where I grew up on holidays and so forth. There was always plenty of people around, plenty of commotion. It was a fun way to grow up. The youngest brother's name was Clarence, and he came home from World War II and was a contractor, and he began building houses in Del City and Midwest City. And he built a lot of houses and did very well. Uncle Clarence, he was kind of my favorite. He was a fun guy. And their mother was full-blood Italian, so she had the energy and verbatim to keep things going and to have fun. Through the years of dealing with each other's families and whatever, nothing changed their commitment to each other. Uncle Clarence, as he got older and more successful, learned to love alcohol and tobacco. He still loved his family, but that was his passion. He had stage 4 lung cancer and refused treatment. He said, whatever will be, will be. Que sera, sera. He continued to drink and smoke. So my father and my Uncle Irvin went to see him, and they decided before they arrived that they was going to talk to him about Christ and about eternal life, even though he had made it extremely clear that that was off limits. He was not discussing his spiritual life with anybody. It was his business. So they got there and they sit down and they visited with him a little bit. And when the subject was mentioned, Uncle Clarence, who had 2 sons who are now Adventist pastors, but he cut the conversation short, and he said he had no desire to discuss it, and if they insisted, they could just leave now. He opened another can of beer and lit a cigarette and looked them in the eye and waited for them to leave. Then my father said, Clarence, do you believe our mother will be in heaven? Well, of course I do. Mother was a good lady. She lived for the Lord her whole life. And then Uncle Irvin said, Clarence, when we get to heaven and our mother sees us, she'll come running. Her white robes will be flying in the breeze. Her long black hair will be falling all over her shoulders. And she'll run to us with tears rolling down her cheeks. And we'll be hugging and crying and laughing all at the same time. And then she'll stop. And she'll back up. And she'll look at us and say, where's my baby? What did you do? Where's Clarence? One or the other, I don't know which one, looked at Uncle Clarence and said, you know, that's pretty much the way it's going to happen. You know Mother, and you know how she was, and she expected us to take care of you. when she asked why we didn't bring you, Clarence, what do you want us to tell Mama? What do we say to her? Because we need to know, and you need to tell us now. We respect your decision. We respect what you believe. But tell us now what you want us to tell Mama. Because she's going to expect an answer. You know our mother doesn't give up when she wants something. The room became very, very, very quiet. It seemed like a long time. And then Uncle Clarence put his cigarette in the beer can, and he wiped a tear from his eyes. And he said, well, I guess you ought to tell her that we're all so happy to be together again. He was rebaptized. He joined church, and as long as he was able, he went to church. He bought and dedicated a beautiful grand piano for the church in his mother's name, because she loved music and loved to play. I don't know, and none of you know, what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 weeks. All we can be sure of is this very second, this moment right here where we are today. If there is anything at all in your life that would keep you from heaven, you don't have to confess it to the preacher or to anyone on earth. We don't have to live that way, but you do have to go to the Lord. Search your soul. Ask the Lord to bring to mind anything that maybe might be a hindrance, might take you away from salvation. We don't know, but there's nothing worth missing heaven for. We don't want to get to heaven and have our loved ones say, where's my son? Where's my daughter? Where's this person? Where's that person? Now, we're all responsible for our own salvation, but we can also help those people around us to stay on the right footing also, to stay close to God. We don't have to be hard-nosed about it. We don't have to make people uncomfortable. I've been around people that were so anxious to witness that they made you want to just run away. We don't need to do that, but we need to live by example. And we need to love God's children because He loved us. And He loves everyone. He died for us. Yeah. Can you imagine hanging on that cross, having nails driven into your body, having people gamble for your clothes? People, as you came to this earth to save, and look at what's happening. He walked the dusty streets of Calvary for you and me. And sometimes when we're out in the world, and sometimes when we're dealing with people, we see someone that just doesn't seem like you would want to die for, that you really don't even want to be around. Pray that God takes those attitudes away from us. I've worked with homeless people, street people a few times, and they test your patience. And they make you wonder. But just think what God must see when he looks at us. We have to love our neighbors. We don't have to be abused by them, but we have to care about them. And that, my friends, is what I have for you for today. It's a pleasure being here. And we have a closing song, I believe.